All right, that's it for that movie. Let's move on to West of Memphis. This is from, it's tough. One website said 2013, one, 2012. This is a documentary by Amy Berg, who also did Deliver Us from Evil. And the cast, it's a documentary, so it's, okay, well, before I do the cast, let me read the plot summary. The West Memphis Three were convicted as teenagers for murdering 3 8-year-old boys and spent 18 years in prison before being released in 2011. The film examines details of the police investigation and reveals new forensic evidence which led to the Arkansas Supreme Court's decision to overturn previous denials of appeals and promoted a new hearing on the case. Oh, and prompted a new hearing on the case. So, in the cast, it's all real people. So, it's Jason Baldwin, Damian Wayne Eccles, I guess, and Jesse Miss Kelly. Those are the 3 guys that went to prison. And then the rest of the cast, is lawyers, whatever, police investigators, I don't know, a whole bunch of people. It's a huge movie. A lot of people in it. Some of you know exactly what this movie is, what the Memphis 3 are, what this crime is. This has been an ongoing thing for years and years and years. I know I will flat out admit this. I'm not trying to be like Mr. Movie Guy. I know everything. I don't know much about this case at all. I even read the back of the DVD, like in Redbox. I guess I read the screen of on the Redbox, and I didn't even know this case. But after watching the movie, I'm like, oh right, okay. So at one point, Paradise Lost was made, I guess, a documentary called Paradise Lost about the incident, the murder and stuff. And, the 3 boys. So, I know that, some of you going, well, duh, dude, like, this is one of the biggest cases in the United States history, and some of you have no idea what I'm talking about. I probably should have prepped this more and read a lot more about, like, Paradise Lost and how that plays. I've heard about that movie before. I've heard it's great, but I've never seen it, and now, I should have prepped that more so I could inform you guys more about it. But I have 2 kids here, and they were sleeping, so I didn't want to prep too much. Like it matters anyway; they're both awake. Yeah, this is a documentary on a true case, and these 3 guys were. I think it's safe to say they were 100% wrongly convicted of killing 3 8-year-old boys, and these 3 guys went to prison for like 18 years in prison for not. They were wrongly convicted of the murder. So this documentary, it opens up. The earlier part of the documentary explains about the case, what the original crime, what happened, and then it shows like some chunks of the kids in court, how it all went down. At the beginning, you're going like, oh shit, like these guys are awful. This is awful. Like I hate these guys. And then, through the course of the documentary, you learn more and more over the years what happened, what evidence was uncovered, oh, well, maybe the guys didn't do it. And then, 2 hours later, the guys didn't do it. And this movie covers the whole range. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But it covers the whole spectrum of 20 years. And, the last half hour really focuses on them getting out of prison in 2011. Some pros, boy, I'll tell you folks, this was a really good movie. And I absolutely love documentaries. I think true crime is very interesting. I think like most people feel that's interesting, true crime. Why do these people do these things, these horrible things? This movie, I have so many pros, I'll just start reading them. Really shows the scope of the whole story. They do a great job of, who's this director? Amy Berg. I can't imagine. It must be thousands of hours of footage, like press footage. Footage of them in the court system, the first time around. All the interviews, old and new, they had to go through. To edit those thousands of hours into like a 2-hour movie that has to cover 18 years of events and have it run smoothly and timelines, just fucking nightmare. I couldn't even imagine that. Where do you even start? And they did it so well. I learned all about what happened. And I'm sure there's like endless stuff you can read about, like Paradise Lost, I guess, is a documentary about this and sequels to that. So, I'm sure it leaves some information out. But for a new person like coming into the story and not knowing anything, I felt like I really got a good glimpse of everything I needed to know. Let's see, follows the investigation for years and years and years. Like literally, it'll say like, okay, well this happened in, I don't even know, I can't do the math right now. This happened 18 years ago, and then 3 years after that, this evidence was uncovered, and then this interview is from 5 years after, and then it goes all the way up to the present time. So it was cool to see that many years documented. And man, I was just like, how many stories are this fantastical? I guess you could say. Like, and trust me, there's nothing fantastic about 3 little boys getting killed, but just like they were accused of being in a cult, witchcraft, sodomizing the boys, like in rituals. And I mean, it's horrible, and that's why I say fantastical. It's like, witchcraft and black magic, like in a small, I must say, midwestern town, I guess. It's just like you never hear about anything like this ever happening. This bad. So, I mean, that was a really fascinating story. Then, to top it off, the kids were innocent and spent all that time in jail, and all the twists the investigators took, and all the cover-ups. If you watch the movie, there, a lot of shady stuff went down in court to, accuse the kids of doing this, sentencing them to jail, knowing that they didn't do it. I'm sure people can argue all day that they did do it, but I believe from this movie that they didn't. And they were set up and all this stuff. It's an amazing story. So, and then at some point in the documentary, celebrities start coming in and talking about their involvement. And this is why I can't believe I'm kind of like unaware of this case on the scale that most people probably know this up and down. They've been reading about it for years. But Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings director, comes in and talks about his involvement in trying to get the people out of jail. Eddie Vedder, Natalie Maines, all these big celebrities talked about how they were involved, and they put up their money, to pay for all these investigators and stuff. And Peter Jackson talks, and Fran Walsh talked. Well, they were in very close contact with one of the main character, Damien, his wife. I'm going on and on about this movie. I'm just babbling. It was freaking awesome. I should move on because I'm babbling big time on this movie. West of Memphis is what we're talking about. Okay, great ending. Yeah, riveting story, great ending. Very well thought out, exceptional movie. Okay, the only con I have for West of Memphis is if you're a longtime podcast listener, I have a thing with children. I have kids. They're like literally like children are like the most amazing things ever on this planet. And in this movie, you see, just hearing about 3 8-year-old boys getting killed and thrown into a river, like tied up, thrown into a river, and left there is horrible enough. But in the documentary, they actually show you them pulling the bodies out of the river and like laying down in the dirt, and the kids are like naked. You don't see like penis or whatever, but they're naked and they're skinny and wet and their bodies are just lifeless, and it is gut-wrenching horrible to look at. And if you don't have kids, I mean, obviously it's still horrible, but if you have kids and they're around that age, your biggest fucking fear ever is that they get killed, they don't come back home, like something happens to them. Literally, I think about it every day of my life. And to actually see these poor little children getting pulled out of the river, and they even show like photos vaguely, but you see enough of cuts to their faces and bruises and stuff. And at one point I was crying. I was like screaming at the TV at the people who did this. It's awful, 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 awful to see those children getting pulled out of the river. I mean, I looked away at one point. I just could not take it anymore. So that's the only con I have. And if you are like me, it's in a way you want to see it because you want to get impacted as much as you can by this awful story. Like, I don't know, like sometimes you just want to know everything. But that's my only con, which isn't even really con. It's just, they should say, like, before you watch this, like, heads up, we're going to show you dead children, like, for real. So, heads up, this is coming your way. They don't do that at all. So, that's West of Memphis. It's definitely a must-see if you like documentaries. No joke, you have to see the movie. Probably one of my best films of the year, for sure.